feel like Kobe in the fourth quarter.
This is the Dane Moore NBA podcast. We are brought to you by Prize Picks. Coming at you Tuesday evening. It's March 17th. Well, for a few more minutes, it's 17th. We headed to the studio right after the Wolves' 12-point win over the Phoenix Suns this evening. We have that game to discuss. We'll discuss what went down in the win. Big games from Julius Randle, Bones Hyland, Ayo Dosunmu. And then we obviously have the Anthony Edwards knee inflammation injury that's going to keep him out the next couple of weeks. We'll discuss that. I've got Wolves beat writer Chris Hyland from the Star Tribune here with me. Good evening, Chris. How are you?
Dane? I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm good. Wolves got back on track.
Mm-hmm.
Feel like we got out of the for a moment out of the dismal vibe around this team right now that was only made worse by the Anthony Edwards injury news that came out. I want to start with the injury news, but quickly before we get started, let people know that we are brought to you by Prize Picks. And when you're listening to this on Wednesday morning, you can head over to Prize Picks, and the stats will be set to pick on for Wednesday night's Wolves Jazz game. We're going to talk about Julius Randle scoring a lot more, Bones Hyland scoring a lot more, Ayo Dosunmu stepping up in Ant's absence. And if you believe that's a trend, you could check where their point totals are set at for tomorrow's game. They don't have those numbers listed as I'm looking at it right now, but you can put together a lineup for tomorrow night, Wednesday night's Wolves Jazz game. There's always something going on over at Prize Picks. If you don't yet have a Prize Picks account, all you need to do is put in the promo code DANE. When you sign up, you'll receive $50 in lineups when you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks.com, Prize Picks app, promo code Dane. All right, Chris. Let's start with Ant's injury.
Yep.
Can you this happened today. Can you just fill in the listeners on the injury and the timetable we were given?
So 1 to 2 week reevaluation is what they're calling it, which does not definitively mean that he will be back in that 2 week window, but I think they're kind of buying just that bit of time to let him rest this injury. We saw him pop up on the injury report in the last 2 games of the road trip with right knee soreness as questionable. He played in both those games, but I think especially when you watch the Oklahoma City game, you saw him favoring it. You saw him, I noticed it early in the game when he didn't contest a couple of layups at the rim. He just kind of pulled up and I think situations where he would have gone up and normally tried to contest, he just didn't. And then late in the game, you saw him kind of reaching for it and hobbling around a little bit. So gets back, gets an MRI done, shows the inflammation, and now it's about making sure that he is really good to go for the playoffs, instead of trying to just gut through it, which we know he will and has done throughout the course of his career. We know that he is a fast healer traditionally. Whenever they assign a timetable to his return to play over the years, whether it was the hamstring earlier this season, I remember an ankle injury a couple of seasons ago that was supposed to cost him more time than it did. He always tends to come back towards the earlier end of the time frame, but I feel like at this point in the season, yes, it would be nice for them to go and get the 3 seed, but making sure Anthony Edwards is healthy for mid-April has to be priority number 1 right now, regardless of seeding. And to segue into this game tonight, getting a win over Phoenix and giving yourself a 3-game cushion now between that 6 and 7 spot is huge for the next week to 2 weeks now, that seemingly as long as they can just kind of hold down the fort over the next 5-6 games, whatever it's going to be, that they won't lose much ground and they give themselves some cushion to at least in the play-in race in that way.
So the official statement from the team on the injury was 1 to 2 weeks and he'll be reevaluated.
Right.
And, typically what happens when a player is what it said, they're out for the X amount of time and then they'll be reevaluated. There often is an extension of, after this, now it's going to be, he'll be back in a week or he'll be back in 2 weeks.
We saw this with Terrence Shannon Jr.
Yeah, I was thinking of that.
In the season where he got reevaluated and was like, well, it's going to be another 2 weeks or whatever, 3 weeks. Yeah.
Because the injury seems so much rest oriented, like letting the inflammation go down. We weren't given a lot of like clarity from Finch when we asked him about it today, about the nuance of this injury. So I think it sounds like it's more of like a resting, letting the inflammation go down, and then, you know, you could come back. So I don't know if that's just going to be Ant's choice of like when to come back there.
Right. And
maybe it'll be his choice in 1 to 2 weeks. Be like, are you ready to go now? The interesting thing is it's going to have to be like closer to the 1 week than 2 weeks to return for him to be eligible for the awards.
Yes.
Which, when we go off of players around the league, like a lot of players have been targeting returns and playing so they do get to the 65 game threshold. You know, think about Tyrese Halliburton. No, that was tied to his contract and making all NBA and all that. But I think, I would imagine that's a factor that's going to be calculated by Ant and his people in this. He'll make all NBA if he's eligible. Obviously won't if he doesn't. He needs to play 8 more games to hit the threshold. There are 6 more games in March. That's 2 weeks. So if he were to miss all 2 weeks, then he would be back in April, and there's 7 games in April. So the way I was looking at it is he needs to come back for that Dallas game on March 30th. That's the 8th to last game of the season.
That's the latest he can come back, play in all the games after that, and qualify for the awards. The problem with that is that there are 2 back-to-backs in there, both involving travel. So
in April?
In April, yes.
Afterwards, okay.
So if you are doing a thing where he's back, but you're managing it, you don't want to play him in back-to-backs. You want to give him ample recovery time and maybe not play him back-to-backs. There's 2 back-to-backs in there. So then he'd really have to come back by the 1 week end of it, which would be next Wednesday, a week from Wednesday against Houston.
Yeah.
Which would be
8 days off.
That would be 8 days off. That would be really at the early end of that time frame. And then you can play in 8 games while taking those back-to-backs off and still qualify for the awards. You look at his game total. One note of clarification here: you look at his game total on any stat site, and it says 58 games, and then the number to qualify is 65. So you would think, well, isn't it just 7 games? Well, as the league clarified, one of those games that Ant played was the one he went out with the hamstring injury early in the year after 3 minutes, and that does not count towards his award total. So it is 8 games that he has to play to qualify for the awards.
Yeah, so maybe if you're thinking, well, he's not going to play in those back-to-backs there, then maybe it's just
just done. Maybe it's just done at this point.
The award standpoint.
Yeah. And there is no like, oh, just suit up, commit a quick foul. There's none of that.
As evidenced by the 3
rule. That's what that rule is meant to prevent.
I think it's 20 minutes is the rule
20,
on it.
20 minutes or 15.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Where you actually play.
So like you said, March 30th would be the date for that game against Dallas, where if he came back then and played all the rest of the games, he would qualify for the awards. But it's a big if. Right. It's a big if.
You wrote about Ant for the newsletter. I want to kind of circle back to that maybe at the end of the episode, of just kind of, talking about Ant's rest of the season whenever that is. But let's start right here talking about who stepped up tonight in Ant's absence. Ayo Dosunmu gets the start. He had a good game, shot 17 shots, as much as anybody on the team. We can talk about him, but I want to start with Bones, who I thought, outside of Randle had another really good game. We'll talk about him, but I thought Bones was the other like primary force that drove winning tonight. And it was sort of predictable in a way. I mean, Bones's biggest games this season have come in the games that Anthony Edwards has missed. Ant missed a lot of time at the beginning of the year, but Bones wasn't really in the lineup. There was in January, late January, Ant missed 3 games, and that's where Bones played really well in those games that he was out. There was the Golden State game on January 26th. Bones had 17, 7, and 5. It was 3 of 4 from 3 in a game that Ant didn't play. Bones also played in the game against Houston that Ant didn't play and the Wolves played really bad. Bones did not play well in that game. But then there was the Milwaukee game on January 13th where Bones played and Ant didn't, and Bones had 23, 2, and 5, and was 5 for 7 from 3 in that game. And then there was tonight. What was his final stat line in this game? Bones had 22 points, 2 rebounds, 5 assists, and was 4 of 8 from 3. So those are 3 really big stat lines in the last 4 games that Anthony Edwards missed. That Bones stepped up and did what he did tonight. Like this wasn't really a flash in the pan from Bones Hyland. This was something that happens when Bones gets an opportunity given to him by Ant's absence.
And they readily acknowledge it too at this point, whether it's Finch or Bones asking them about it after the game. With Bones, I just asked him, I said, does it just clarify what you're being asked to do? And yeah, it does. He doesn't have to worry about scoring versus playmaking. It's no, Ant is leaving 20 plus shots on the table a night. Go get yours, and this team needs you to score, especially in that spark role off the bench as a scorer. So it just makes everything, I think, a little easier for him. Simplifies his role. We know that's how he's been getting minutes as well. When Ant is resting, Bones is usually on the floor to start the second and fourth quarters. That's typically when he's been playing. And here's the other thing. Bones likes to play fast. Yeah. Ant doesn't like to play fast. Right? So little bit different stylistically. So Bones doesn't have to worry about that if he's sharing the floor with Ant. Like Bones can get it and go, especially with Ayo. We've talked a lot about that.
That was fun tonight.
Yeah, they were great. They were fantastic. And yeah, it just makes it easier for Bones, I think, just to know what his role is, know what his purpose is going into these nights, and not have to try to do 5 different things. It's like literally just do 1 or 2 things and go out there and score. Yeah. And don't worry about like deferring to Ant. Don't worry about deferring to others, getting the offense going. No, go get yours because the team needs you to get yours on this night.
And you're just going to have more minutes, like
right.
or like longer stretches
of
time that you're out there. When you are a bench player, and Bones was like one of the last guys in the rotation. So he's playing like maybe 2 6-minute shifts a game kind of normally, or maybe 3 little 5-minute ones. Like I think for all players, this is true, that it helps when you can have a period of time where you're out there for an extended stretch where you don't feel like you need to put your stamp on the game right away, though Bones often does that. I just think like that it just helps bench players, especially scoring bench players, to have that extended leash. And yeah, like you said, it's not a lot that a lot of different things they're asking him to do. Compete on defense. Like that's the one thing that kind of comes and go. I mean, he competes on defense all the time, but like his effectiveness defensively comes and goes. And then offensively, it's like play as fast as you can and shoot threes.
Yep.
And that was tonight. He just puts, I feel like he's leaning into playing fast even more. We've been talking about, they play fast with Bones and Ayo. Like Bones has been profiting off of that. And I feel like he's like leaning into it even more. It is just, it isn't just like, okay, we're going to run. It's no, I'm running, and full speed sprint running. And now he's got some guys that are running with him.
Absolutely. And 5 assists as well tonight. So it's not like it's just a scoring role for him. Yeah. It's 5 assists as well. And the bench as a whole, I mean, looking at that column, 5 assists for Bones, 5 assists for Nas, 6 assists for Kyle Anderson.
That's a lot
tonight. Yeah. That's a lot of assists coming from the bench tonight. It's easy to point to that and say, hey, Ant's out, ball movement increased. Ant's out, pace might have gone up a little bit. But that was the case tonight. Yeah. At least it felt like it. And that's the recipe for the next week to 2 weeks, is leaning into what these guys do well. You have, the social media reaction to the Ant injury news was, obviously very doom and gloom. But I was sitting there thinking this team can win games. They can win these games. This set of games that's in front of them right now, they can win a number of them without Anthony Edwards, or they should win a number of them without Anthony Edwards. We've seen them put together. That Milwaukee game was arguably their best game of the season, and he didn't play. Right. So they have the talent. Bones is a big part of this, and yeah, it's not impossible. The doom and gloom that happened this afternoon, I was just like, yeah, just give it a moment here. Because I think it's just going to help focus some of these guys in their roles temporarily. Sure. And Julius obviously being the thought I had was this Julius coming off of his big night against Oklahoma City. I said, this is hidden the best thing that could happen to Julius right now. You don't want to say that injury, you want everybody healthy, obviously, but for where Julius has been the last few weeks and where his game has been, and having him be the focal point right now, and it's simplifying for him what he has to do or what the team is asking him to do, maybe the best thing to have happen right now for him to get back really on track consistently. Yeah, because Julius's best games often come when Anthony Edwards doesn't play too. It's not just Bones. Like, we could go through, and there's even a longer list of excellent Julius Randle games when Anthony Edwards hasn't played. And you know, there's something like a little problematic about that, of like, why it is, but to your point, Julius needs to get back in a rhythm. What better way to start playing more decisively and more effectively when that's what this team needs? Like, they want to play through Julius Randle. They wanted to play through Julius Randle tonight. They had to, and they're going to have to continue to do that. So Julius is going to be fed these opportunities that are rhythmic for him, you know, and like, oh, this is what it feels like to have success doing this over and over again. Yeah, I mean, tonight, 32 points in 33 minutes, 8 for 14 from 2, 2 for 3 from 3. You know, he had a gigantic game, and against a team that didn't have much for him, you know, in terms of the no Dylan Brooks, right? And he took advantage of that as a scorer, and also I thought filled in a lot of the playmaking or just initiation sort of stuff. Well, just it reminded me of his playoff performances last year, where it was they don't have anybody to guard you tonight. Go out there and bully them around. It felt very much like the playoffs last year, where really neither the Lakers, especially, and then Golden State, he had his way with Draymond in that series, and it really felt a lot like that, kind of recapturing that. I thought it was really encouraging just to have that game that he had against Oklahoma City, against a team that traditionally has done very well defending him, just to get him back in the right mindset. And, you know, there were possessions where it wasn't it didn't look decisive. And I remember kind of remarking to like Jace at times, and like, that was a long possession of dribble down, but he hits the shot at the end of it. But maybe the decisiveness, the decision making is, I know exactly what I'm going to do here, even if it takes 8 seconds to do it. I know what I'm going to do in this moment. I know how I'm going to attack this defender and where I'm going to end up getting a shot from. So no, I hear what you're saying, and I mean, you're pointing at like sometimes those possessions that you're talking about that are a lot of Julius dribbling, you know, aren't effective. They haven't been effective this season. But like, again, I think it's just like having the license to know that that's more okay to do when there's no Anthony Edwards out there. I think that leads him to feel more comfortable, which leads him to play more decisively than he has been. I mean, it is night and day different than like a week ago. You know, it was indecisive and ineffective. Now it's at least been situationally decisive, and again, 6 turnovers is the only blemish on the evening for him. But yeah, it's, I mean, the bar was low coming into Oklahoma City. So It's anything was going to be an improvement over where he was the last 2
Right.
weeks entering that game. But
They just need volume from him. They
Yeah.
need a volume from him right now without
Yeah.
Ant. Yes,
Yeah.
you'd still move the ball, like get more Jaden. You're getting more Jaden. You need Bones, but like, what happens when there is a game when there isn't 16 assists coming from the bench,
Yeah.
or Bones doesn't have 20 and he has,
or Dante goes 0 for 8.
right.
Yeah,
Like
you need it.
It is a situation temporarily
Mm-hmm.
that, he needs to run the ball a lot. Like they need to run the ball with Julius a lot. And I thought they did that effectively. And to your point, like, I think this could low key be something that benefits Julius in a way that when Ant does come back, that at least Julius is back in a rhythm as he falls back into his number 2 option.
Yeah. But that's the thing. That's been the challenge this whole season is Julius has those moments where Ant has missed a few games and then it just doesn't quite sync up when they're back together. I mean, it can for times, but it hasn't been consistent. And that's been the kind of the story of this season for them, is just that consistency across the board, the Julius Ant pairing, finding that rhythm, finding that chemistry has just been a challenge all season. And I don't know what it's going to take. I don't know what it's going to take to lock back in, if it's even possible for them to lock back into kind of what they had last postseason, late last season as well. I remain skeptical, but I think the last 2 games, they needed this. This is not a luxury for this team that Julius is playing like this. They need Julius Randle to play like this. I know people just want maybe the coaching staff to sit him, play Nas more, whatever, right? But the fact of the matter is they are going to need Julius Randle to play well if they're going to go anywhere. And you needed this to happen, or at least start to happen.
Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Falling Knife Brewing Company, and you know that Falling Knife is your place to watch Wolves games in Minneapolis, where the sound will be on the TVs. But this Saturday, Falling Knife has their annual All Sorts Market happening from 1 to 5 p.m. The All Sorts Market is what it sounds like. All sorts of different vintage and collectible items and art items being sold at a market at Falling Knife. The weather is supposed to be really warm on Saturday, a high of 70. You're going to be getting out of the house on Saturday afternoon anyways. Make it a brewery Saturday and get out to Falling Knife Brewing Company for the All Sorts Market. Again, that's this Saturday, March 21st, the All Sorts Market at Falling Knife from 1 to 5 p.m. And if Saturday doesn't work to get out to the market, there are games Wednesday, Friday, and Sunday this week that will all be playing in the tap room at Falling Knife. Watch Wolves games with Wolves fans at Falling Knife Brewing Company. Yeah, I mean, he's just going to be the foundation of the offense here for a little bit. But another key, character now in the offense, a primary character, and even of the starting lineup, is Ayo. And he, he was a primary piece tonight. Like I said, Julius took 17 shots. Ayo took 17 shots. And just really looks kind of like a repeatable sort of cog in this thing, even scaled up to the starting lineup. I think Finch, he strikes me as one of those guys that Finch is very comfortable with at any time in any lineup combination. We've seen him in any lineup combination.
Yeah.
I think he's going to play a lot here in this time, and I think he's going to play well. I do, because it seems that he's figured out like what he does best in the context of this team, or is moving close to fully understanding that. He's been a quick study,
and it is going to unleash more Ayo Bones minutes. It is going to, he was handling the ball a little bit at times tonight. He was in that role a little bit. It'll be interesting to see, maybe more a little bit of him with Kyle on the floor as well, as maybe when Kyle's handling the ball, Ayo's a little more off of it. So I'm interested to see just kind of who he ends up playing with in heavier minutes.
Sure.
Now that Ant isn't here for the next week or so, I'm encouraged by, I think, the aggressiveness with which he was hunting his shot tonight. I was not really expecting that. I didn't. If you had told me that Ayo was going to tie for the team lead in shots, I would have bet against you on that.
But I think it's a hint that's what it's going to be, man. Like there's going to be a bad Julius game here coming up. Like, and I think when that happens, it does need to be like, okay, Ayo needs to be 120% of what he was. Jaden does, Dante does. Like he needs to be one of those elevators when in Ant's place. But you know what I'm saying? Like there needs to be another part of the offensive engine outside of Julius, even if Julius is the primary thing right now. And I feel like, I don't know, Ayo might be like, I don't want to say like the number 2 option because I don't think it really works like that.
But he has something to his game where he has a bit of self-creation to his game in the sense that he can just take the ball and just go. And he can create that way. He can take the ball. Finch referred to him as a kind of I don't know what the word was, comfort or something like that in the last seconds of a shot clock. Because again, it feels like he could just take the ball. And while he may not be like the most like skilled in terms of like,
he's not like a wiggle guy
or package or something like that, you know, like getting in his bag, but he can get to certain spots. He can do certain things and he can use his speed just to get something towards the end of a shot clock. And he's, as we were talking to him a little bit tonight, found a little more of a mid-range game here than he has with the Bulls. And so he's been able to explore that a little bit. So really encouraging to see this. Some interesting nuggets before the game on Ayo from Finch. I forget who asked the question, but basically Finch was saying that, you know, defensively it's been a bit of an adjustment for him because in Chicago for as long as Ayo has been in the league, they've had a contain mindset, and the Wolves have more of an aggressive attack mindset on the perimeter. And so Ayo has had to kind of relearn some steps defensively and a slightly different way of playing along the perimeter.
More aggressive, more into the ball.
Yeah, because you have the backstop of Rudy behind you if you get beat. So it's been I think that was a subtle observation that we've noticed. And Ayo has said that before the road trip that he was getting used to it. Like playing with Rudy is an adjustment. And I think it all kind of ties together that you're seeing in real time what it's like to learn this and incorporate yourself midstream to a different style of defense and a different way of playing.
Right.
And I think overall he's acquitted himself well.
So 2 things you brought up there that I think are interesting adjustments for him. Shooting mid-ranges here, which he is. He shot 4 long mid-range shots for the Bulls before he got here. He's shooting, I don't know how many they'll say were long mid-range shots tonight, but he had 7 long mid-range shots on the Wolves already before tonight. He's getting to that floater more frequently. I asked him about that after the game, and he said that those were kind of prohibited in Chicago. They were like a threes or at the rim team, and the only time they were taking mid-range shots or even floaters really was at the end of the shot clock. That's what Ayo said. And then defensively, that's a Chicago change as well, of just stylistically, when you have Vucevic behind you versus Gobert, there's a different level of aggression that you can afford to have. So I think it's interesting that Ayo had no mid-range game in Chicago, really, and his defensive numbers were not that good in Chicago. And now he's being asked to do pretty different things here, where he's being asked to take those. You talked about how confident he is. It's like, oh, I have this mid-range stuff in my game. I just wasn't using it in Chicago because that's not how he played. And then defensively, it kind of makes sense, right? That physically with his speed and his strength, that
he should be an aggressive.
He should be an aggressive defender. And I know it wouldn't surprise me if his defensive numbers accordingly increased because of that.
100%. And I kind of thought that was always how he was as a defender, like with his skill set and his
you just look at him.
You just look at him and it's like, yeah, you should be aggressive. You should be up. You're quick. Like you can handle guys off the dribble, like instead of kind of maybe playing a more conservative approach, conservative style. So yeah, you know, it's an enlightening thing sometimes when you attend these press conferences and hear
Yeah.
some of these answers, and it just sparks thoughts in your head of like, oh yeah, well that makes sense. This is a whole different philosophy than he's had literally his entire NBA career, because he's had
Donovan as his coach.
Donovan is his coach the entire time. You know, a roster that was constantly not changing, but like there was a philosophy there that
they really started leaning into a philosophy that is not look
yeah.
like Timberwolves basketball.
Yeah.
And like at the beginning, I was talking about like, okay, well that was kind of a risk then to be like, we think you can take Ayo and copy paste him from Chicago into the Wolves lineup if it was different. But to this point, like I think we're figuring out that the things that Ayo wasn't doing in Chicago, he does have license to do here, and he's not bad.
And he wasn't doing them because he wasn't able to do them,
wasn't allowed to,
or was bad at doing it. Right. They just weren't playing like that, or was not allowed to do that.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is how the NBA works sometimes. Different situations call for different skill sets. Ask Kyle Anderson.
Sure.
You know, like
that's a great example.
You know, it's different teams, different coaching philosophies, organizational philosophies mean certain things for your skill set. And sometimes it's a match and sometimes it's not. And when it's not a match, not to say that it was not a match for Ayo in Chicago. He was very beloved.
There's just
there.
different matches.
It's just a different, it's when you peel back the layers of what it takes to play in the NBA, this is the kind of nerdy, in-depth stuff you can learn and really drill down in, right? That's why you have a podcast.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
That's exactly for why you do this.
Exactly. It was one of the best defensive games of the season, according to Finch. Afterwards, the numbers were good. Phoenix shot really poorly from the field. It wasn't like their best defensive rating game of the year. They gave up all those offensive rebounds at the beginning of the game, and Phoenix was scoring a lot early on. But I think they clicked into maybe one of their better defensive performances for the second half, maybe you call it like that. Last 25, 30 minutes of the game, maybe in some of the second quarter there. But I think that's going to be part of the answer to winning here too. We talk about Bones stepping up and Julius stepping up and Ayo stepping up. That's largely offensively what Ant's absence provides.
Yep.
I asked Finch about it after the game or before the game, just kind of the idea of like leaning into a little bit more of a defensive identity. I don't know if you remember this, but like Cat got hurt. I think it was like the 2019 season. They were a really bad defensive team that year. It was like Robert Covington was on the team, and Gorgie and stuff. And I remember writing an article about like Cat missed this month, and the Wolves were like, at the time that Cat went out, were like 28th in defense. It was a really bad defensive team. And for that month, they sort of shifted their style of play because they didn't have Towns and Gorgie starting, and it's kind of leaned into defensive, like a defensive identity for that month. And for the month of February or whatever it was, they were like second in defensive rating there because they made a tactical shift with that team to be like, this is how we're going to win right now when we don't have Karl Anthony Towns. And Ant has much more of a defensive skill set than Cat does. I don't think those are one-to-one comparisons, but I think the same sort of logic applies of being like, even if it's just as simple as knowing like, we don't have a guy who's going to be able to go get us 45 tonight. Like it's a commitment to defense, like more of a commitment than it normally is. And I think they have enough defensive personnel, to be able to play that way. I don't think it's I do think it's going to be part of why they win. If they win over these next 2 weeks, is because it's going to be a really good 2 weeks defensively. And they've already been better defensively with Ant off the floor than on the floor this season overall. So I thought it was encouraging because of that it was a really good defensive game for them tonight.
Yeah, and especially, again, given the road trip and some of the clunkers that they laid on that road trip, another return to form for something that has to return to form.
Right.
if they're going to make any noise in the postseason. Finch chalked up that first quarter to a couple of different things. I think it's worth noting. One, he said typical first quarter after a long road trip was what he said. And then number two, and this has been a much debated thing on this show and elsewhere, the game plan.
Yeah, right.
The game plan was wrong tonight. It was not the players not following the game plan. The game plan was wrong. And they adjusted the game plan and it got better. So holy cow, that can happen, right? So I want to spend 30 seconds on this, where it's like, I remember earlier in the season, Finch said, like, we need the players to follow the game plan, because if the game plan's wrong, we need to know if the game plan's wrong. So we need them to follow it if it's going to be wrong and we need to change it. Tonight, the game plan was wrong. They kind of followed it early and then they changed it. And the change was, as Bones said after the game, Rudy was they were in more of a high wall coverage. They went to more of a drop, have Rudy back, everybody else kind of on their man, less rotation, which allows for better rebounding.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the switch, and it paid off in the second half for sure, because they definitely did a better job rebounding than they did that first quarter or two.
Yeah, it's interesting to make the shift. I think it's interesting to start with having Rudy up the floor, right? Or in the high wall, up, not in a drop. I think it was a recognition of they have two really good guards on Phoenix. I think that was the logic behind that coverage at the beginning of, like, well, they're just gonna be setting screens for Booker and Green all day, who, if we're in a drop, they're just gonna pull up.
And it could be another thing where, like, the coaching staff studies and is like, here are their numbers in high wall versus drop. So we're going to try a high wall because maybe Booker's numbers are worse in a high wall.
Yeah, I mean, well, just think about Booker. In a drop, he's a really good mid-range shooter. Like, you can just step into that mid-range, step into it over and over again. Jalen Green can pull from there. So I get the logic of why they wanted him up there at that time. But what happens when Rudy's up the floor? One, he's not by the basket to rebound. And then what's happening now is Julius or Dante in the corner is rotating over. And now your back line, like rim protector, we say, is the low man, right? Well, that guy is also the rim. They go from being the rim protector to the shot goes up and they turn around. And now you're the primary kind of rebounder at the rim. You know what I'm saying? Like, because Rudy's going to be coming back down to crash, but you know, some of those that were just being tip dunks, that's on the low man who's rotated down there. It's kind of like when you're up in that high wall coverage, it's kind of like playing a 2-3 zone. You know, it's going to be kind of tough
you're scrambled.
Yeah, you're scrambled from a rebounding standpoint, and you're susceptible on the weak side offensive rebounds. And they were getting killed on those right away. Or they're finding Iguodaro on the short roll, and he was just going and dunking at the beginning of the game. So I think it was an interesting adjustment for them to make. I think it's a little bit of a sign of them starting in that coverage. Is like, we don't have Ant to guard one of Booker or Green.
Yeah.
I think that was part of that.
Sure.
And then they got away from it because they weren't rebounding out of it, you know? And a credit to them for adjusting the coaching staff and the players on the fly to take away the one thing that was hurting them, which was giving off offensive rebounds in the first quarter.
And, you know, it speaks to Jaden on ball defense, being able to handle that in that area. Ayo, Dante, others, Jalen Green had a terrible game.
3 for 17 on March 17th.
Yeah. Oh, look
Happy
at that.
St. Patrick's Day.
What a segue. So kudos to everybody that had a hand in that. Really looked like they locked down. And listen, you know, having Ayo out there it should improve, you know, the initial bursts of defense. We've often criticized Ant, and one of the criticisms he gets is not having the defensive intensity from the jump every night. And sometimes he finds it, or he doesn't find it, or it's just inconsistent. But with Ayo out there, that should be less of an issue over the next week to 2 weeks because of the way that Ayo plays. So especially in, you know, the right matchups as well. So Very encouraging stuff. Felt more like the Timberwolves defense that we're accustomed to seeing.
Sure.
Because man, oh man, that road trip was hard to watch from the defensive end of the floor.
Not great.
It was that was honestly, Dane, like anybody who knows me, my writing, I tend to be very measured in my coverage of the team. That was some of the worst stuff I've ever seen, that road trip. And I didn't know if they were ever going to recover from it, to be honest with you. I thought that was season defining, like, collapse of a road trip. I didn't know if they were going to come back and just ants out, bad vibes all around. This had, to me, tonight had the opportunity to be the ultimate bad vibe loss of the season. If they lost to Phoenix and were just suddenly one game from the 7 seed, I don't think it could be overstated how important tonight's win was.
Yeah.
From just getting the season back on track in a number of ways, and defensively is among those ways in which it got back on track a little bit, or at least it felt like it.
Today's show is brought to you by Factor, and when I am busy and when it's cold outside grocery shopping and finding time to cook is tough, and that's why in our household we do Factor every winter, because Factor makes healthy eating easy with fully prepared meals designed by dietitians and crafted by chefs. So I eat well without the planning or the cooking. These are quality functional ingredients, including lean proteins, colorful veggies, whole food ingredients, and healthy fats. There's no refined sugars, there's no artificial sweeteners, and there is no refined seed oils, but there is variety, 100 rotating weekly meals to keep things fresh and delicious throughout the winter. Options include high protein, calorie smart, Mediterranean diet, GLP-1 support, and ready-to-eat salads. All the meals are always fresh, never frozen, ready in about 2 minutes with no prep and no stress. I use Factor, and I really think you should try it out too. Head to factormeals.com/DaneMoore50 off and use code DaneMoore50 off to get 50% off and free breakfast for a year. Eat like a pro this month with Factor. New subscribers only, varies by plan. 1 free breakfast item per box for 1 year while the subscription is active. Today's show is also brought to you by our friends over at Harry's, and I think it's so great that something like Harry's exists. You remember back in the day, it was always brutal to need to go to the store to purchase new razors. Those razors were also expensive, and I think Harry's has really changed the game here. In addition to being a high-quality razor, I think the best part of Harry's is that price point. Harry's owns their world-class blade factory in Germany, so there's no outsourcing, no middleman, and because of that, they control the entire process from steel to shelf, and Harry's keeps the cost low. Why pay $30 for refills when Harry's gives you better blades for a fraction of that? They just sent me this new handle. You connect the blades to the handle when you need to replace your blade. And I just kind of like, it's weighted. I like that it's heavy. It keeps the razor itself always feeling new. It's a barbershop quality shave with German engineered blades. If you don't love your shave, Harry's will make it right. No questions asked. A risk-free trial means there's zero downside to giving it a shot. For a limited time, our listeners can get the Harry's Plus trial set for only $10 at harrys.com/DaneMoore. This set includes the all-new Harry's Plus razor, 1 refined 5-blade cartridge, a 2-ounce foaming shave gel, and a travel cover to protect your blades on the go. Just head to harrys.com/DaneMoore to claim this offer. And after your purchase, please let them know where you heard about us. Please support our show and tell them we sent you. Let's talk a little bit about your writing from this week. Prior to tonight's game, I read the newsletter today, and some of that harshness that you're talking about that showed up in your newsletter, specifically talking about Ant, which we did the whole thing. Like, Ant's out for a couple of weeks now. These are the guys that need to step up, but ultimately, for this team to get to where they believe that they can get to, there needs to be another step from Ant. As much, even though that's a lot to ask, he's having his best offensive, season of his career as an individual scorer, but he's got a complicated role of coordinating the offense, being a primary playmaker, being a major defensive piece. And you wrote about the fact that he needs to be that. This team needs him to take another step. What kind of what went into that being the time to write?
It's kind of, I kind of just wanted to take a step back on Ant's season and where this team is right now, where this team is going in the future, and what Chris Finch has often said about the next step for Anthony Edwards to become an MVP candidate, to kind of crack that top 3, 4, whatever it is in the MVP race that gets him into that mix. And the answer always is, we heard it last season, we heard it 2 seasons ago, and we heard it at the beginning of this year in training camp. Ant, as a two-way player, he can be the best two-way player in the NBA. It hasn't quite worked out that way for as good as he's been offensively this year.
It hasn't even been close to that.
Right,
he hasn't been anywhere near one of the best two-way players.
What I wrote was, I think it's a two-way street. I think some of that's on Ant. I think some of that is finding it within himself to do that on a night in, night out basis and to be that kind of player. When he did that interview with Ahmad Rashad, and Ahmad Rashad passed that message from Michael Jordan on to him, like, keep embracing challenges. To me, that's what keep embracing challenges means. It's like, what does your team need you to be? Where do you take your game to another level that you don't even realize, or what do you tap into that you haven't tapped into yet? To me, that's what that symbolizes. That's maybe what Michael Jordan is saying with that. Michael Jordan notoriously being a very good two-way player throughout the course of his career. So, but I think it's a two-way street. I think it is slightly unfair to Ant to expect him to do all this while being the point guard and having the ball in his hands all the time. You got to get him help. You got to get him regular help, and help that is going to enable him to not have to expend so much energy on the offensive end of the floor. I'm sorry, but that's just kind of the player he is. There's a finite amount of energy there, and he chooses to spend most of it on the offensive end of the floor because he has to. And then he has to have the ball in his hands late in games because he's an excellent clutch time player now. And so he's got to store it. So that's why you see some of these nights with the off-ball defense just being terrible. So I think it's incumbent upon Ant, but it's also incumbent upon this organization and Tim Connolly and the future of this team to find the right team around him, the right backcourt mate around him, to maximize Anthony Edwards as a two-way force. Because right now, this ain't it from that perspective. And that's what spurred me to write that. Right now, they're asking, they got to meet him halfway when it comes to unlocking Anthony Edwards' potential all defensive player. There's a reason why, and one of the things I wrote in the newsletter, I think there's a reason why none of the guards that you see mentioned in the MVP conversation ever make the all defensive teams. People who are mentioned on all defense that also win MVPs are guys like Giannis, who are rim protectors or big guys. And Wemby's going to enter that category soon enough too. But that's because they're big guys. They're not chasing guys around the perimeter and then having to go score 35 on the other end. So I just think if you're going to do that, you got to bring in somebody who's going to take a lot of that off of Ant's plate and enable him to expend that energy equally on both ends of the floor.
3 seasons ago, when Mike got here, Anthony Edwards was 86th percentile in defensive estimated plus minus. The year after that, 23-24 season, he's 87th percentile in defensive estimated plus minus. This season, he's 37th. And I think that goes to your point about the point guard thing. Where it is appearing to be, at least at this stage of his career, maybe too much to be everything they need him to be as a point guard and everything they need him to be as a defender. And those two things kind of cannibalize each other.
Yes.
I bring up those numbers because those say that when Ant was next to another starting point guard who was still wasn't 38 years old.
In a very good place in his career.
Mike was in a very good place in his career, that you got a much better defensive, and the Wolves were just a little bit better of a defensive team back then. And Ant was just more dedicated to defense. Like that is the main thing here, is to the Jordan challenge or whatever, is like, can you challenge yourself to be more defensively? Yeah, Ant can be better than 37th percentile, but I do think you're right that this cannibalization happens when he doesn't have the help. that he needs. And I don't know, maybe it's not a point guard, but maybe it's more other defensive personnel that doesn't demand. I don't know. He's not really guarding a primary guy. I did a great job on Shea.
He did
a great job on Shea.
but that's the one kind of thing. That's the exception to the rule of what his.
Well, he just normally isn't even guarding a main guy. Like pause the first possession of the next game Anthony Edwards plays in, and look who he's guarding on the first possession. That's his primary matchup, right? Yeah. Like he is typically guarding the fourth or fifth option of the opposing team. You know, so it's great when he does step up at times against Shea, or he's good on switches and stuff like that. But it's not like he's really being always asked to do. Like he's not guarding the primary guy most times. Jaden takes that guy. Yeah. So there's they've scaled down his defensive responsibility into guarding lesser players, which maybe plays into some of his getting a little lazy, getting back cut, some of that stuff
but that's the opposite of what they told us was going to happen early in the season, though. The opposite, they told us that Ant was going to take more of those responsibilities. Ant said he was going to take more of those responsibilities. We heard them talk about it in training camp and in the preseason, that this was going to be how it was going to work out in the season.
So why? Why did it not work? Because they didn't understand how much energy it was going to take.
Yes,
for him to be this,
and because they didn't have a point guard.
Yeah.
That's true. It's they've had to adjust, and they've adjusted to the point that they've now won 42 games.
Yeah,
and they're going to make the playoffs, and it's going to be fine. And from that perspective, but yeah, I just feel like that's one of the ways in which this season has not felt like a win overall for this organization, because it hasn't maximized Ant in the way in which they said it was going to, or the way in which they envisioned him tapping into that next level. Well, it hasn't happened.
You also say training camp, like back to the Mike point. Yeah. They're saying that at training camp, when we were all operating under the assumption, they were operating under the assumption that Mike Conley was going to be the starting point guard again, you know, and it was going to be, but that's what they didn't know going into the season. Maybe they should have known, but they didn't know, to your point of what they were saying, that, you know, there was going to be this much on his plate as a primary initiator for this team. So yeah, I mean, I think the next step comes from both of those things for Ant.
Right.
Is more of that quote unquote point guard play and more defense. And the question is, can both of those things happen simultaneously? We're skeptical. You probably just get a better version of Ant on both sides of the ball next season if you do something to address the backcourt in the offseason.
Well, now to me, listen, the playoffs, could he level up? Yes, I think he can. I think he absolutely can. But it was a struggle for him last year to level up. You know, game 3 of the Thunder series didn't happen the rest of that series.
Yeah.
It was hard for him to level up in that on both ends of the floor. And he talked about why. It's just a lot. It's just a lot. And he's telling you that it's a struggle for him. He's being very honest when we ask him about that stuff. He's not paying lip service to, he's like, no, man, it's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard for me to do on a night in, night out basis. And I think the organization needs to be listening to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And not also just operating under the assumption that, okay, saying it's hard to do during the regular season all the time, but when the playoffs come, he's gonna ratchet it up. Like, yeah, I mean, like, I'm sure he's gonna put in a little more effort to the defensive side of the floor. He's just it's playoffs. He's gonna play with more energy overall, but the regular season will have shown us the regular season that makes you where he hasn't been turning it up consistently. And that's the thing I just keep coming back to with this team of with the playoffs is like, it's about consistency. Like, what can they consistently do? I know that their high level is high.
Right.
You know, but in the playoffs, it's not about, can you turn it up to beat one team one night?
Yeah.
It's you got to, like, I don't know, to win a 7-game series against a good team. Like, you probably got to play well, like, as a team, like, really well, like 5 games, right? Maybe one of them, the other team plays really well and they win it.
Yeah.
Like, And that, my point is that hasn't been the Wolves' rate
Right.
of the frequency with which they play with that. And I think Ant is a little micro example of that as well, because
I think that's very fair. And that's
you know
kind
what
of,
I mean?
That's kind of my read on this team too, which is they are capable of these highs as a team and tapping into their ceiling, but they just don't stay up there.
Yeah.
And when it comes crashing down, it comes crashing down sometimes, and you get multiple 20-point losses on an important road trip when you need to be putting up wins. Yeah, that's why it was just so eye-opening, I thought, that last road trip, because all right, this was the time of year when there should be no more excuses of the schedule, no more excuses of the trade deadline, none of this. You're 3/4 of the way into the season, pedal to the metal. And
as it was last year.
You did it last year. Maybe you had an easier schedule to do it against last year, but you did it last year for the most part. And it's just the way in which it happened was part of it too. Like you've mentioned before, it's like, when was the last time the Wolves had a game where they played really well and just came up a little bit short? Right? Like they just turned in so many clunkers on that road trip. Even Golden State in the second half, they allowed 69 points to that Warriors team that they trotted out in the second half. And it's like, is this team ever going to get back to what they just were? And then I reminded myself, yes, they will.
Yeah,
because that's who they are. They will have another good streak before all is said and done where they play really well. But is that going to be what they are going forward the rest of the year, or is it just going to come crashing back down again? And the odds are it's going to come crashing back down at some point, whether it's in the end of the season, whether it's in the middle of a playoff series, what have you.
Yeah, and you get a little bit, I mean, you don't have to play perfect in the playoffs. That's not what you're saying. And maybe you can have the one crash down game and you still win in 7 or 6.
You can't get in a funk though, the way that they get in a funk for a week.
Yeah, it can't sit with you.
It can't linger.
Yeah.
Right. It can't linger the way that they let these things linger sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I think to wrap it up with the defense, like I do think when the defense is like playing at a high level, it provides a little bit of a floor for this team. Like we've talked about this team, like having a really high ceiling and no floor this year. I think that's because the defense has taken a step back. Like the defense and the stability that comes with that, like what they do now, we know like when the defense isn't working, then they go away from Rudy, and now you try to outscore them.
It's a good point, because today at shoot around, I asked Jaden, I said, do you feel like with this team, the offense affects the defense more, or the defense affects the offense more? And his answer was offense affects the defense. He said, because I feel like sometimes if you miss a shot, you make a mistake or whatever, you're slumping, you're slow to get back, you're this, and then all of a sudden you're out of position on the other end of the floor. They're getting back in transition, all that stuff. So to me, that answer was a very good answer. Number one, very truthful. And number two, it is indicative of who this team is.
Yeah.
You may want them to be a defense first team, but how the offense is going is really going to dictate, I think, that end of the floor more than the other way around, unfortunately. Now,
and maybe you can shake some of that now. What I was talking about of like these 2 weeks without Ant, if you, because you aren't going to necessarily have that offense there every night. You know what I'm saying? And you just kind of learn to be like, wait, we need to
tell yourselves going into a game, hey, we may have to win 102 to 100 tonight, right? Because then we got to do it.
Yeah.
Right. If you don't have the luxury of putting up 125 and winning 125 to 118, you might have to win 102, 100, because that's what the night is going to dictate. So you have to have that mindset and not let the offense, your bad offense. And the other thing is, with Ant out, you're going to have more opportunity to score.
Right.
So your shot volume or whatever is going to go. You're
going to still get yours.
You're going to have
still
more
play defense.
You're going to have more opportunity on offense to rectify the mistakes that you've made with Ant out than as opposed to maybe with him in. Yeah.
Do we miss anything? You have anything you want to hit on your end?
Not really. We'll see.
I like the newsletter piece.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. I wasn't on the road trip, so I had to just kind of think of something out of thin air.
Sometimes those are the best
I'm
ones.
gonna have to do more of that as the season goes along here, unfortunately. But no, yeah, just get the book. That's all. Buy the book.
Perfect time to
it'll be
read.
fun.
He's
Audiobook.
injured.
Yeah, audiobook, whatever. It's all fresh.
Yeah.
It's all still good.
Yeah.
It's hard to believe it's almost been a year.
Yeah, this is crazy. That is crazy.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for coming and doing this after the
Mhm.
game. You're my
Mhm.
late night podcast co-host. We do this. Maybe we'll do another one.
Dane and Chris
next.
after dark.
Yeah, right. Oh, this is fun. I'm glad we did get the chance to talk about it right away afterwards. Good game.
Mhm.
No Ant. Yeah, this was the beginning of whatever is next. And we don't really know, exactly
Yep.
what this team, but I'm glad you hammered home how important this win was against the Suns. One, from just a standings standpoint, but that I do think that would have felt crushing.
Yeah.
In a way to this team to have lost it. So, schedule doesn't lighten up. It's going to be Utah tomorrow's pretty late, but it's
From a volume standpoint.
Right,
Yes.
right.
Yeah.
It's going to be important games here the rest of the way, and we'll see how this team settles into its non-Anthony Edwards identity. You guys can obviously follow Chris on Twitter at Christopher Hine. Read him in the Star Tribune. You can get that newsletter for free without a subscription to the Star Tribune. Obviously, I always recommend and pump that. The next episode will be on Thursday morning. Britt and I will record after that epic Wolves Jazz game on Wednesday night. That I was going to sound really stupid that I said that if we somehow lose tomorrow. But yeah, we'll be back after the Jazz game. Appreciate Chris being here. And yeah, until Thursday morning with Britt, he's Chris. I'm Dane. Peace.
How I'm feeling, man, I hope it never stop, yeah. Green and hot so you can find me in the crowd, yeah. Don't let standards ever bring you down, yeah.